Hello, everybody, and welcome to Addison Asks, the podcast that gives you real experts, real relatable topics, and real steps to tackle for your healing and growth. Each episode will tackle a unique topic to level up your life. I'm Addison Bell, leading sex and relationship coach and holistic energy practitioner. This week, we are blessed to have Katy Alaniz. She is a certified trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapist. She owns a private practice in DFW area, serving a vast majority of populations. But a few things she primarily focuses in on is eating disorders, couples, polyamory, and non-traditional relationships. Thank you for joining us today, Katy.
Absolutely, I'm excited.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about the new generation of relationships. And I met Katy years ago when I was still working as a therapist, and I saw you really branched out to these non-traditional relationships. And so I wanted you on the show. So what made you kind of interested in this particular population?
I think for me, I remember, and it was actually while we were working together, I was still trying to find my way and like stumble through the dark. Because, you know, I was married at the time and monogamy was not working great for me. And I felt really guilty about that. And I was like, obviously there's something wrong with me. And I didn't have any guidance really until I started just being more open about it. And then I started finding more of my people. So that is one of those things that I can see all the different pitfalls. And so when I became fully licensed, I was like, I would love to be that person, like leading people through the darkness if possible. So it's been great to work with that population.
Yeah, I remember you as an eating disorder therapist. You were just amazing. And so I am sure you're amazing and rocking it out with these individuals. And so when you think about helping this population, I feel like there's been a shift over the last few decades really towards more non-traditional relationships, or actually them just becoming out in the open a little bit more. And so what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really think our generation is starting to look at what hasn't worked. So when I hear people trying to force themselves into the box of like, I'm going to get married and be monogamous, and, you know, it's also pretty strict with gender roles. Like, that's my chance to be like, why? Because like 50% of that ends in failure, like, or like divorce rather, not failure. But so I think our generation is starting to look at like, why do we keep doing this and repeating ourselves over and over again if this hasn't been working for quite a while now? And a recent study was even done where 47% of people that are dating, and it was over all the age ranges, 47% of them said, I would like something that's not just completely traditional and monogamous. I don't know what that looks like. And then that number went way up. I want to say like 68% with millennials. Millennials were like 68% of them were like, I don't think I want to do the traditional, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't have education on it, but I don't want to do it. Yeah. And I was like, those are higher numbers than I thought.
Yeah, so when you get somebody coming to you and they're saying, I want something different, because I get similar population in my practice and the sex and relationship coach, that they come to me and they want something different. I get a lot of couples that are already in relationship and they want something different. Do you believe that non-monogamy is right for everybody?
That's a great question. I don't think it's right for everybody, just how any other like treatment or lifestyle, religion, it's like there's not going to be a one size fits all.
What? There's not one religion.
Wouldn't that be so much easier?
That's right for everybody? Come on.
I know. And I look at it very much like kind of like the human body, where it's just like some people are allergic to chocolate, and it's like, cool, chocolate works wonders for so many people. It's not going to be everyone's thing, and that's okay. Yeah. So I never try to talk people into being non-monogamous. But if I start seeing like glaring issues where it would be helpful, or a partner is saying, I just feel like really suffocated, and my partner is great. They're not even doing anything to like make me stay. But I just feel like there's something more, or I'm restless, I'm unsatisfied. That's when I'll bring it up and be like, have you ever heard of this? Does any of this strike a chord with you? And yeah, so no, it's not for everybody. Some people are just fine without it. But I think more people are realizing like, oh, that's probably more for me than the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah, do you find ever that, I know I tend to find this, that sometimes in a couple, you have one partner that's really open to the non-traditional kind of relationship, and then you have the other partner that is really close to that even concept or even discussing it. It's not, that they're deciding like, yes, we are going to do this, but even the discussion is completely off the table.
Yeah, I do see that. And when couples come to me talking about, being dissatisfied with their lives or their relationship, it's really concerning to me when someone can't even have the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll challenge clients sometimes and be like, what is this bringing up for you, to where I was like, because we can discuss anything else, like a partner saying, man, I'd love to live in Alaska one day. And I'm like, that doesn't mean you're going to do it, but at least you're able to have a conversation saying like, oh yeah, I mean, there's probably pros and cons. I wouldn't want to leave this area, but we should go on a vacation. I'm like, why is this the one thing you refuse to even process through? And I usually find out it is due to some type of really deep-seated like fears, insecurity, abandonment issues, attachment issues. And that's where I love to kind of challenge people when they're like, nope, this is just a boundary for me and I refuse to touch it, so you have to respect that. And I'm like, I hear you, but you haven't done any of the work to where you can actually say, no, actually, that's not for me. And I've worked on everything.
Yeah, so you're really pushing people, just have the conversation to at least kind of look at that structure if you're seeing that it's needed.
Yeah. Or just for personal growth. I've worked with people before that one of the partners is like, I would love to try like ethical non-monogamy. The other person's like, absolutely not. We're not even broaching that. You'll have to leave me first. And I always kind of go into that with like, hey, no one's going to force you to do anything. I'm not here to make you be polyamorous, and I'm not here to make anyone be monogamous. They're both fine options. But if they do want to work on like personal growth, I'm like, what trauma do you have? Like, what attachment issues do you have to where this is such a scary conversation? Because like, I'm not just going to help you gloss over that. Like, I'm here to challenge you.
Accountable for at least doing the work to look at it. I know that there's a book I love, More Than Two, and I suggest it for all my clients that are couples, just to even do the questions to explore what relationship is to you, because I think a lot of times when we're dealing with non-monogamy, we have to deal with some of the insecurities that we get away with not having to look at in a traditional format of a relationship. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that statement. I think this is kind of one of those things that people, of course, we don't want to look at it. Like any attachment, insecurity, like trauma that's happened, no one wants to like dive into that and be like, let's focus on that for days.
It's fun.
I know, for us maybe, but so I do find that quite a bit that is the root of the issue. And they've gotten away so long with pushing that down by identifying as something that's super safe for them. And again, that could be the absolute most genuine identification. But again, I kind of require clients to do that work if they're going to be in therapy with me. Because what I don't want to have happen is saying, I have all these insecurities, therefore you're not allowed to see other people, and that's the end of it. That's my boundary, so you have to respect that. And I'm like, that's not a boundary, that's a rule that you're making to control someone else's behavior. And in no other situation would we say that that's okay. If someone's like, I have such a fear of flying, so you're not allowed to go on vacation, like we're not doing it. No one else in situations, people would be like, have you ever talked to someone or worked on it? Are there any meds available? Like, we wouldn't just accept that at face value and be like, oh, that's their boundary, so I'm not allowed to do anything with travel. Good to know. Like, no one would be okay with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. I love that example. Like, I don't like flying, so you can't like flying, or I never want to do this in my life, so I'm going to control your life.
Mhm.
I find that with sex too in my field.
I
People,
bet, yeah.
people will set up those rules as well. Uh, so I think talking about the upcoming generations and the kind of the newer generations, the younger folks, what do you think has really been a catalyst to move us from into this realm? I know that we've seen, divorce rates have gone up over the last few decades, but do you see any big catalyst for that movement in?
Yeah, I think social media definitely plays a part, where, with me growing up and you growing up in the same generation, there was not options for how to live your life just splayed out in front of you. We didn't have social media, so it was just kind of like, what you're raised with, and you maybe get exposed to other ways of living through friends or sleepovers, or maybe like a course here and there about like life overseas, or a marriage and relationship class. But that's a huge thing now, where people are so able to just Google like, my relationship isn't working, and there's tons of different options saying, hey, have you ever considered this? This is how me and my partners live. This is how I raise my kids. And it's just right there for the picking. And so I think it gets in the new generation's head way quicker than the older generations, where it's like, I'm sorry, but that's not even an option because that was not presented to me. So yeah, I think, yeah, just having like that wealth of information, and seeing other people live their life.
Do you think that sometimes that actually creates too much information, too many choices, or people struggle with that?
I think so. And it's almost like when we were working together, like with teenagers in treatment, we always kind of had that saying, right, of like, just give them two options.
Yes.
Don't say, hey, what would you like to do today? It's like, no, hey, so we're either going to play tennis for 10 minutes or go on a 20-minute walk. Which one would you like? That's way easier. Have those two choices and pick between them. Especially for people that are in some type of distress or some type of high anxiety situation. So I think when people are considering what their needs are in a relationship, if they get flooded with 20 different ideas saying this is the right way to do it and everyone else is wrong, that's going to be really overwhelming. And I think maybe even cause more insecurity, because it's like, I'm going to pick this thing, I'm probably doing everything wrong.
Yeah. So I think as the new generation has really brought in, non-monogamy is an option. Not that it wasn't an option before, but we're really talking about it, and I'm seeing it more. I'm hearing it more. Hence why I wanted you to come on, because this is one of your amazing zones of genius. Do you think that sometimes, though, and I know that this is going to be something that some of my listeners are going to want to know, is do you think that sometimes non-monogamy is used as a way to actually avoid a problem in a couplehood or a relationship, or in a monogamous relationship, or commitment issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So this almost, especially like in marriages that I've seen, between, well, I guess it's really any age. It almost reminds me of kind of the thing older generations used to do, where it's like, if you were stuck in a bad marriage, it's like, let's have a baby. That'll fix things. And it's like,
No.
What are you not dealing with? Because that makes things way worse, in my opinion.
Way more stress.
Yeah. And that comes from me having a child. And I'm like, dude, that only makes things harder. Like, you really need to figure your shit out, like outside of that thing. And so I never want people to look at polyamory as like this holy grail of like, well, if we just switch to that, it'll be magic. I'm like, it can be fantastic and it can heal a lot of past hurts. You have to go into it, though, very prepared, very ready to be fully honest about your feelings. And if you can't do that now with one partner, no, it's not going to magically happen if you add another partner.
I love that. So true. So true. Adding more partners really just complicates things. Oftentimes it can heal, but yeah, it complicates things. So what happens if, what do you suggest if one partner is really like, I want to open this relationship up, I'm ready to bring in somebody else, and another partner is like, I'm not really up for that. I'm not really on board. What is your suggestion usually?
So I am a huge fan, obviously, of people immediately trying to seek out therapy with someone that they're comfortable with, because if you can nip the, it's almost like why people do like premarital counseling. It's like, it's not because anything is necessarily wrong or someone really wants to leave the relationship. It's to prepare for what could go wrong and give you the skills necessary before you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I don't like this and I have no skills to deal with it. So seeking out therapy, I think, is one of the biggest things. And there's so many good resources now, because those of us who are polyamorous are starting to get more outspoken, where we're like, hi, can we please normalize this and stop being treated as like other? And so it's getting easier and easier to find those resources.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, getting help is always, it's always helpful to participate in that growth process that we all are on. And so with that, I really asking people to go and get help with that. I wonder if you ever suggest people just get that help, even if they're both on board for it, because I know I oftentimes get clients and both parties are like, yes, we're doing this open relationship thing, we're both in it, and actually in truth they still need the coaching, the therapy, whatever you want to call it, to guide them through that rocky process of feelings and emotions and issues that really are going to come up, not might come up, are going to
they will
come up.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And also I want to recognize, telling everyone at every turn, like, get therapy. Of course, that's my knee-jerk reaction, because I see how much good it does and how many problems it prevents. Sometimes that's not accessible to everybody. So what I even do for clients sometimes, if they're like, look, especially in that situation you just said, where it's like, we're both really on board, like there's no resistance, like we're both excited. I'm like, cool. Even if you can only afford to go once a month, I would recommend seeing someone like me, or, anyone that you're comfortable with and who's licensed in your state, because what I do a lot of times is see people once a month. We do like a check-in with me as like the third party, being there, being like, hi, wait, can we go back to what you just said? Because that's actually not like a healthy mindset. And both of them are like, what? I thought we were doing great. And I'm like, you are. I have an issue with what, we can't allow that to keep going. And then I'm also really big on offering resources in between sessions, so that it's like, you can coach yourself in a lot of these areas, but I'm here to make sure you stay on track, and ask the hard questions. So sometimes that involves like having people listen to podcasts, whether you're into it or really resistant of the idea. I'm like, hit up some of these podcast episodes so that you get an idea of like, how are people making this work? And I was like, I guarantee you will find an episode of something somewhere where someone addresses your exact issue. There's also great books, that can kind of prepare people for like, okay, this could be a problem in the future. How do I feel about that? And again, it's all about preparing, just like preparing for success.
Yeah, because there's lots of roadblocks, I think, that somebody like you or myself can see along the way of like, oh, wow, that's going to be an issue, and so to really just prepare them in advance so that they can kind of sidestep that and it not be a huge deal. You mentioned resources, and so before we really wind down here, I mentioned more than two. Do you have any book suggestions or podcast suggestions or anything to suggest people go do?
So this book, I'm not even all the way through it. It's called Polysecure by Jessica Fern. This addresses actual attachment and trauma and how that intersects with ethical non-monogamy.
Wow.
So this ends up, honestly, I kind of want to create a book club for ethical non-monogamy and like go through this point by point. That would be a great place to start. And then podcast wise, there's a great new one called Practicing Polyamory. And my partner and I were just on there like a week and a half ago, actually, and that's a newer one. And all that the host is trying to do is highlight the stories of the imperfect people who make up the polyamorous community. So it's very like, it's not super like highly intellectual to where you can't follow it. It's just very much like, hi, I'm just like a regular person. And there's all types of people on there.
That's wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's all great. And of course, still watch Addison Asks.
Yes.
Have to put that in there. Okay, so we are going to do our fire round. So, what is your finest quality or trait? Brag for a second for us, Miss Katy.
Oh, Lordy. I think I am really good at making people feel included, and like I'm that person at a party. Sometimes if I can see someone just out on the outskirts, like I feel a little uncomfortable for them. So I'll go over and be like, what do you do for work? Or like, what do you like? How do you know so-and-so? So that's always super important to me as a therapist too, to make people feel immediately like you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm a normal person. So.
Yeah, you've always been good at that. I remember you with teenagers being able to like really wrap people in when, you know, our clients who are eating disorder clients were like really feeling like they didn't belong at the time.
Yeah.
So that's always been a gift. So I can toot your horn too. That is one of your gifts. So, and the last question is, what's one question you want the followers to leave this podcast asking themselves to move them forward in their own personal journey, no matter what their relationship style?
Wow, that's a great question. I would maybe want people to leave with the question to themselves of like, why am I uncomfortable? And that could involve any relationship style, dynamic, sexuality. It's just like if something comes up and you automatically feel resistant or defensive about it, just asking yourself, why am I feeling that way?
Yeah.
And being willing to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Great question. And hopefully my followers, you all leave and do just that. You go do some journaling, do some questioning of self. Before we sign off here, Katy, what is your website? How can we find your magic?
So I have a private practice called The Wakeful State, and that's my website, thewakefulstate.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, all those good things.
All the socials. So, and I obviously am Addison Bell, and you can find me at addisonbell.net. Thank you again, Katy, and hopefully we can catch you on here another time.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.